great pleasure to be here with you all this evening. I was speaking to a group not too long ago, and I said, there are two kinds of talks that I get an opportunity to give. And one of them I call the talk from your head, where it's just dispensing knowledge, information you gathered, that type of thing. And I've done a number of those talks over the years. The kind that really turns me on is the talk from the heart. When it's something, when you're sharing with people who really are interested in things that we all have in common, our common humanity, some of the challenges that we all have to face during our lifetimes. So it's a great honor for me, as well as a pleasure to be here tonight to have a few minutes to speak with you about care for caregivers. I'd also like to thank Janice and Heather and the wonderful Alzheimer's Association here for the work that you are doing. You made me proud to be a member of the community. Some of the things that you are doing, in addition to the move that you're making to have this great new space and to offer opportunities like the bird watching that you mentioned, which is such a great, wonderful thing, a peaceful thing, a relaxing thing. But we all need more of that in our lives these days. So that's something. But also the support we talked about that you're offering. I think you've moved from having one support group to having 5 support groups, which just is so tremendous. I went on your website and was looking back in one of the newsletters that had come out, and it talked about some of the advantages of belonging to a support group. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you all are already here and you're obviously supportive of one another, but the things such as the information that you can share with each other, the problem solving techniques, the experiences that you individually have had. So, wonderful organization doing tremendous things, and there's a saying that successful people congregate with other successful people. So I also am benefiting from having an opportunity to spend time with you, successful people in your own right, and I appreciate that opportunity. Now, I think Janice mentioned, I could just mention a little bit about myself here. She didn't really say that. You can only mention a little bit about yourself. But I will just say to you that I am a former Dale Carnegie instructor in the Atlanta area. And I'm always excited because when I get an opportunity to speak to groups, I go back in my head. And, of course, you go through a lot of training. And one of the things they told us is when you get the opportunity to speak to a group of people, first of all, make sure you've earned the right. Do you have something that you can share with other people? And that's pretty easy. Again, we have common experiences. Each of us has our own knowledge base, so we almost always can say, yes, I've earned the right in some respect to speak to a group. But then, are you eager to share that? Is it something that you really want to share with other people? And my thought is, if something I've gone through in my life, whatever it is, it may have involved suffering, it may have involved learning a lesson. If there's something I can do to help somebody else out, well, then of course I'm eager to share. And then finally, are you excited about it? Well, I'm excited to be here. The word enthusiasm actually comes from 2 Greek words, entheos, and it actually means God within us. So I kind of think of it, when you get excited about something, it's really the best part of us, the part that we can reach out and touch somebody else. It sounds a little corny, but it really is true that you can be excited and enthusiastic about that. So, that said, I'm going to share with you something that I received this morning. Okay, now I'm going to tell you that I'm the oldest child of 5. And here is my beautiful mother. I don't know if any of you know Blaise Dismer. But anyway, my mom was the organist at the Catholic Church for many years on St. Simon's Island. And she now has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and is living in Middle Georgia with one of my 4 siblings. There are 5 of us. I have 4 younger sisters. Okay? So anyway, without identifying too much information, I'll tell you what I got this morning. Here's a text message that one of my sisters, whose name will remain anonymous, sent me this morning. Dear Blaise, blank and I are butting heads again. I had offered to take back on the duty of finances when she was keeping Mom full time. Well, blank is never satisfied when she is not in control. If I did not know better, it seems to me that she actually likes to argue. Therefore, the current status is not working. It has gotten to the point that I don't want to answer phone calls from her. This is so awful for me because I am not spending any time with Mom, because I do not enjoy being around blank. Blaise, this is the second part of it. If you will take over telling each of us how much to put in every month and keeping the checkbook, I will ... So, I think it speaks to our common humanity and our common situation. Let me ask, any comments? Does anybody have a thought, any comment on what I read here? Anything at all? And if not, just to get the ball rolling, I will accept any, I wrote down a phrase for this, personal ridicule from me. This is an audience that doesn't know me well, because usually a bunch of hands go up.
My comment is that I hear these family dynamics, and especially among the siblings, every other day.
Yeah, right. And that's exactly what came to my mind too, Janice. It's like, this is so human. I mean, we're all in this boat together. It's been said that almost everybody at this time in our lives is going to be a caregiver, a caretaker, you know what I'm saying, a care recipient, a caregiver, or both. Almost all of us are going to be, yes.
Well, another thing, too, is that everybody doesn't arrive at the same page at the same time. It's like some people read fast, some people read slow. So one person may be more understanding of what's going on, and the other person hasn't gotten there yet. So you've got this conflict going on.
Thank you. And that's so great when somebody can recognize that. As you just said, you know, when you can step back from the situation, you can go, so-and-so is irritated right now, or so-and-so may be really overwhelmed with financial burdens or physical burdens, things like that. And, you know, we get to these stages at different times in dealing with them. Very good point. Yes?
I, too, am the oldest of 5 children. And our mom had Alzheimer's. And she was the sweetest little lady. She never said a bad word, but when she got it, boy, she got mean. She said words we had never heard. But we children got along good. But it seems like Mama, you know, the boys, there were 3 boys, 2 girls. It seemed like the boys walked on water. They didn't do a thing. But us girls, we got it all. And we were the ones that really, I guess you'd say, took more care of her before she went to nursing home, because we stayed one night and one had stayed in the daytime.
I'm glad you make that point, and it's a really good one. I have to say, in my situation, it's very similar. I spent some time with Mom when, you know, my sister is away and things like that. But it seems like, I guess this is a cultural thing also, that unfortunately for the women in the room, it's sort of an expectation that you are going to be taking care of Mom or Dad, whereas we guys, we get kind of a break on that. Not always the case, but I think a lot of times it's unfairly shifted the burden to you women.
I mean, they helped, but, you know,
Right, but
not like.
not 50-50, right? I hear that. Well, I just came back, let's see when it was, less than a week ago, from a national meeting in Arlington, Virginia, of the Anxiety Disorders Association of America. And I fly a fair amount, I guess, for my work. Actually, I'm a medical salesperson full-time right now. So I find myself on airplanes a good bit, and I get tired of hearing the flight attendants go over the same thing. You guys know it at the beginning of the flight, right? It's the same thing. My golly, don't make the mistake of calling them a stewardess anymore. They're not stewardess, they're flight attendants. But anyway, so you always hear the thing about, you know, can you very, very, very unlikely event that we experience a change in cabin pressure, what happens? Right. It's not birth, but we have those oxygen masks that drop down, don't we? And what do they tell you to do?
Child first.
That's so great you said that, because the reason it makes such a point is that's exactly what we think, isn't it? It's, well, of course, when it comes down, I'm going to put it on the child first. But I want to make that point because it's really counterintuitive, isn't it? We automatically think, well, yeah, I got to take care of the other person first. Always. And particularly if it's a child. But the point they make, is just the opposite of that. No. You pull that cord, and even if you don't see it inflate, don't worry, put that on you before you tend to the child or the person next to you or whatever. What does that have to do with us talking here?
You can't take care of somebody else if you can't take care of yourself.
There you go. Isn't it true? Isn't it true? And yet, I have trouble keeping that in mind. I think a lot of us do. We're brought up in this society and we're so focused on, if I'm a good person, if I want to be a good person, if I want to get to the pearly gates one day, I need to focus constantly on meeting other people's needs. I think it's great to meet other people's needs, and I know you all do too. But it's essential that we take care of ourselves if we're going to be able to help other people out, right? So, even though it's common sense that we need to take care of ourselves in order to help anybody else, there are some barriers to our taking care of ourselves. Can you think of anything that might cause you to hesitate about taking care of yourself? Could be physical time. Okay, great. Yeah. We have a very limited amount of time, don't we, to take care of ourselves. And it seems like sometimes, to me anyway, it seems like I kind of get put at the back of the line. You know, I've got a stressful job. I have got a home life to take care of. I've got a daughter. If I look a little tired tonight, my daughter is probably landing right about now. She just moved to Australia. And my wife and I were up reading most of the time because we were worried about our daughter. So we have all these things in our lives, don't we, that are competing. So time is one. What's something else? Anyone who?
Guilt.
Guilt. Good. What would we feel guilty about?
Put yourself first.
Yeah, are you brought up to do that? Does mom always say, okay, now I want you to put yourself first and take care of you. Don't worry about the other people in the world. You know?
It doesn't matter if they say it or not. It's just natural instinct for most people.
Right, and I think even more for women than for men. But I agree, it's really very much. And then if you have those guilty feelings, you feel really yucky about that. I don't want to deal with that. We're taught that maybe we're selfish if we take care of ourselves. Now, and I don't know about you, but I really didn't like that. In fact, I have that tied in a lot with the religious training that I had growing up. That, geez, so-and-so's selfish, That's not a godly thing. You should really be looking out to take care of your neighbor all the time. Problem is, of course, if you don't take care of yourself, not only can you not take care of your neighbor, but you're not happy. You're going to be a depressed, maybe anxious sometimes individuals. So, some people have said it's scary to think of our needs. Any idea why you might feel scared to think about your needs? On occasion in my life, I thought, I'm so out of touch with what I need personally that I don't even want to go there and think about that. Anybody ever felt that lost before? I'll admit, it's been a while, but I can remember when I was feeling that way. And it was a very scary feeling. Sometimes we feel unused to asking other people for what we need. How many of you, by show of hands, were brought up with clear instructions about when you need something, ask for it, straight out? Okay, good. We see some hands. There are a few. So I'll tell you what, you're in the minority. And I think that's fabulous. It's something that if you weren't brought up with that, you can have all kinds of problems. You can develop just a pattern of sitting around and stewing, waiting for other people. Doesn't she know I need this? Doesn't he know? They should know this. But whether they, quote unquote, should know or not, a lot of times people don't know. We're caught up in our own minds. So a lot of us are not used to asking for the things that we need. And we need to learn how to ask for things, how to be straightforward. If you spend a lifetime in a very circuitous way, sort of giving hints to people and hoping that they'll catch on to what you need or what you want, then it's a very different kind of situation to come right out and say, hey, I really need such and such. I need some help with Mom this week. Can you please do so and so? Hey, Bob, you know what? It would really help me if you could stop by the store on the way home and pick up some items because I don't have time to do that. Your neighbor, would you be kind enough to help me out with some lawn work? Because I know you really enjoy that, and I don't have time. Or I need to get out for a walk. I need some exercise. Could you maybe 15 minutes 3 times a week come over and stay with my loved one because I really need to get some exercise? Those are things that we need to develop skills to do because we don't have those skills now. Again, let me just ask, how many of you feel like you're pretty good at that right now, at asking other people to do this? Okay. I see about 8% of the room. So, wonderful. Kudos to those of you who do know how to do that. And those of you who don't, I'm having to learn too. I think it's a lifelong process, and I would encourage you to do that with me. Okay. We're in a certain caregiving situation. One of the questions I want you to ask yourself right now is, am I voluntarily taking care of this person, or am I sort of stuck taking care of this person? And that's not to say you don't love that person. You might love them more than anybody else in the world. But it's an important question. Why is it an important question? Because if it's a voluntary situation, you are probably going to feel like you have some real control over your situation. Whereas if you're kind of thrust into a certain situation, as many people are, you may feel like, gosh, I don't have any control over this. This is very difficult. Anybody who has been put in a situation like that, and I understand if you don't want to say anything, but anybody who care to comment on either side, either voluntarily choosing or you were kind of thrust into the situation, how that's different? Yes.
Well, I think as a spouse, passed away a few years ago, but as a spouse, it evolves, and little by little, you're doing more and more to support that person, to help them in their day-to-day needs or living or whatever, helping them compensate for what they're losing if they can't remember what day it is. And, you're trying to figure out some way to keep them connected. I don't think that's voluntary. I don't think that's voluntary at all. I think that is little by little, it takes away more and more and more of your time. But you really don't have a choice because this is your mate. And that's kind of, for better and for worse type of things. So it's a difficult situation to be in, to be caught up in that. There's anger, there's frustration, there's all of it.
Right. Absolutely. And I love the way you talked about how it changed over time. Isn't this so incredibly difficult to be in a situation where it's almost like you have to constantly look not only at the person you're taking care of, but also at yourself, as you were mentioning. What kind of feelings do I have? You might be kind of blindsided and get up one day and realize, hey, I'm enraged right now that I'm stuck without a life. Other people, it's not so much so. And it depends on the situation. Very complicated, but that was very well put, too. It's a difficult situation.
The word you could use is thrust into that situation.
Yes, sir. You're thrust into it, exactly. Have you experienced something like that?
I am, but I'm related to this lady. It's my life.
Okay, great. So you understand then, too, that's a, in a sense, it's almost like a no-win, but it's not a no-win. Rather, I think it's a matter of degree, and it's a matter, too, of your perception. We could take a certain situation, and, for instance, let's say I'm taking care of Mom. Okay? Here's Mom, and Mom's in my house, and I'm taking care of her. And if I ask each one of you to observe us, for a week, and then give us some sort of a little report on what you saw, how many different ways would we see it? You already know the answer. Everybody in this room would see it in a different way. And I see it in a different way, too. And my mom would see it in a different way. So your perspective on things is tremendously important. And it's one of the reasons that it's so important to take care of ourselves. Because your perspective is going to be tremendously influenced by things like depressive symptoms or isolation. Let me just run through a few of those symptoms, by the way, things that we call depressive symptoms. And you're probably already aware of them, but it might be good just to think about it in the context of being a caretaker and some of the difficulties you run into. One of them would be a change in your sleep pattern. Some people sleep less, some people sleep more, but they often see changes in their sleep pattern. Changes in appetite. Again, maybe people eat more. Maybe you're a person who, when you get depressed or down, you just hardly eat at all. Difficulties with concentrating. You just can't focus the way that you could before. Slowed down. People, we call them slowed psychomotor skills. And so that could be physically, that you're just dragging, or it could be your mind. As you think through things, you just go, wow, I used to really be on this stuff, and I'm not anymore. Lack of energy. People have less energy. Less libido, less sexual even thoughts or fantasies, things like that. Feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. A lot of times that will be a symptom of depression. Crime spells. Thoughts about death and dying. Those are the ones that jump out at me at the moment. But there's a whole sort of a group of symptoms that are depressive symptoms. And it's kind of like we all experience some of that sometimes, You have the blues. People get that. We all do at certain times. But when you get enough of those, at one time, you get clinically depressed. And that can be a real problem, particularly for a caregiver. Isolating is another one. You tend to want to stay by yourself. You don't want to go out. Okay. I'm going to give you a few other ideas about evaluating your stress right now. And then we're going to do a little exercise. I'm going to actually ask you to evaluate what your stress is. Okay? Here's a few questions. How do you perceive your situation as a caregiver? We talked about, is it voluntary or is it thrust upon you, as Jim said? Is that right, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. How well were your needs met before you became a caretaker? How's your overall health? Do you have a history of taking good care of yourself or not so much? What is your relationship with the one you're caring for? Sometimes you're taking care of somebody like it might be a spouse who we've never felt closer to somebody. Sometimes we're put in situations where we don't even like that person, but because of circumstances, for one reason or another, you're there taking care of them. Okay, now I want you to think in your mind, do I rate my stress, just in general, when you think about it, do I rate my overall stress, and this isn't right at this second, but in general, do I have low stress? Do I have moderate stress? Do I have high stress? Or do I have really unmanageably high stress? Okay. Now, I'm not going to ask you what your stress level is right now, but I am going to ask you to imagine that your best friend is sitting next to you, and you told your best friend what your stress level is, okay? And your best friend says, how's that sound to you? What do you think about that? What would your best friend say to you? Would they go, and again, I don't know what your stress level is. You might be one of the very lucky people who goes, I have the regular stress in life, but no big deal. But you also might be somebody who goes, I'm stressed all the time. If you told that to your best friend, and your best friend said, what do you think about that? I'm betting that a lot of you would go, I think I better do something about it. Okay, we have two choices when we're in that situation. We can either take a new action, because I think we all know the definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing over and over, but you're expecting what? Different result. Exactly. Right? So we either keep doing the same thing, or we can do something new. All right. So let's talk about something we can do. And I had written in my notes here the serenity prayer. I love that so much. In fact, I have it in my bonus room downstairs. I've got these big letters up that spell out wisdom that's up on the top shelf in the bonus room. And it's a good reminder, because we need the serenity to accept the things we can't change, right? And we need the wisdom to change, the courage to change the things we can. See, I did one worse. And then the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So, keeping in mind that we want to strive for serenity, that we want some peacefulness, but that it doesn't just all happen automatically. We need actions, right? Okay. We need to focus on one of two things. I'll let you tell me which one. The things that are not in our control of the situation, or the things that are in our control. What do we need to focus on? Absolutely. Because the other one, and yet, you know what? I'll be darned if I don't keep wasting time and energy getting upset on occasion, not all the time, about things that are out of my control. Somebody reminded me just the other day, Blaise, why are you focusing on that person? You are wasting your energy. You cannot change anybody but yourself. I know that. I've been a therapist for 25 years, and something I certainly know is I can't change somebody else. I can only change myself. But it takes some real work, and I think it's a constant process to keep going back when we get off track and go, whoa. I can't deal with it. I can't help that. There are things I can do. I don't want to say I can't help somebody else, but I can't change somebody else. I can change me. And one of the things I have difficulty with in this regard is saying no to people. How many of you have a difficult time saying no? Just hoping you say no. There's 6 or 7 of us. We'll huddle up afterwards and commiserate. Now, I think that's a very common thing in our society. And I'm pleased to see the majority of the people in this room are able to say no. There you go. That's one of the benefits of staying busy, isn't it? All right, so one of the things we can do is practice relaxing. Okay? I can remember talking to people who go, I'd be like in a group, say running a group at a hospital here on St. Simon's or somewhere else, and I'd be talking to somebody, a guy, go, hey, I don't have any problem relaxing, man. I'll sit down at 11 o'clock at night, I'll pop open a beer, and I'll get a pizza, and I'll watch a football game. And I'll go, dude, that may be fun, but that is not relaxing. Your autonomic nervous system is not relaxing and letting go and that sort of thing. So we really have to learn how to relax sometimes. Okay, there's a famous quote by a coach. I bet everybody in here pretty much knows who it is. This coach of the Green Bay Packers. And he was a big believer in basics. And even though his football team was one of the earliest ones to win several Super Bowls, he always went back to the basics at spring training. And he would go walk in with a football, and he would say, of all things to these Super Bowl champions, gentlemen, this is a football. Okay, who was that? Anybody?
Vince Lombardi.
Vince Lombardi, right? Of course. Vince Lombardi. And people who are the best at what they do never forget. Somebody mentioned in here tonight about you, I'm trying to remember which of you it was, you can always learn something. Somebody said you can always learn something new. And I think you were saying that about being in here, because that's my attitude. You can always pick up something. Well, let's go to the basics. Let's talk about relaxation, okay? All we know so far for sure is that it doesn't involve popping open a beer and peace and watching football. Although it's fun. I'm not saying it's not fun. But one of the things that we don't learn, particularly women in our society don't learn, this is a basic, is belly breathing, okay? How many of you know the difference between what we call diaphragmatic breathing and shallow or chest breathing? Okay, let's talk about it a minute, because women in our society in particular are brought up to take shallow breaths. You breathe from your chest, okay? I would like everybody in here to please put your hands top of your chest, okay? And you can just kind of look down at your hands, and I want you to take a deep breath in. I want you to blow it out. Okay. How many of you, okay, let's do this too. Now let's put our hands down on our belly, okay? Same thing, I want you to watch as you take a deep breath in, then blow it out. Okay. How many saw your belly move? Okay, how many of you saw your chest move? Okay, right about half and half. The point I want to make is that the breathing from your chest, which is so natural and so normal, and we do it without thinking, is not going to be helpful to you in relaxing. You need to breathe from your belly. And so one of the things you can practice is you can practice at home sitting down in a chair and just watching, okay? We used to practice this at the Anxiety Disorder Institute at Atlanta with patients. Every single day we have patients there, because the breathing part is something that doesn't come naturally. It's something that you do as a baby. If you watch an infant breathe, you will see them doing that very thing. It's their belly that moves. But as you get older, we switch to a shallow breathing from our chest. We tend to hyperventilate more easily. We tend to get dizzy more easily. And the big thing is we don't get as much oxygen into our bloodstream, to our muscles, so that they can relax. So that's a very key element. And if you get nothing else out of tonight, I encourage you to go home and practice just sitting quietly and doing some diaphragmatic breathing. Wonderful way to relax.
I do that, but I don't, sometimes I don't sit and watch. I just,
Well, good. Do you feel better after you do it?
I do.
Then I don't care about what's in your head. If it's working for you, you're probably not aware of it, but you're also getting enough.
I do that, and I work crossword puzzles. I mean, that's relaxing to me.
I find that relaxing too. How many like doing crossword puzzles? Well, it's also great, as you all are aware, for mental alertness. It helps our minds to stay active and all. And other games like that too, other kinds of puzzles. Do you ever do those words that are in there and they're jumbled up? You know, and you have 5 or 6 letters and you have to switch it around. That's one of my favorites. Used to be pretty good at it. I'm not quite as good anymore.
My wife did that for years, but when I say years, the last 3 years, but now she can't do any of them.
Can't do it. Gotcha. Well, for as long as we can do these things, I think that's a wonderful exercise to keep our minds active. Very good. So we talked about belly breathing. Now, how many of you are familiar with progressive muscle relaxation? This is where somebody tells you to relax a certain part of your body. For instance, in fact, they typically start by telling you to tense that area first. Let's try this for just a minute. Everybody take your right hand, okay, and I want you to begin to squeeze it, okay? Squeeze it tight now. Tight, very tight as you can. Okay, and now relax it. Just let it go completely through. Okay, very good. And now you to take your forearm on the right side again. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to try and take our hand and our forearm. Let's just tense that, okay? Just those muscles. 3 seconds, okay? Keep going, keep going. Okay, now relax. And I want you to notice the difference, how that feels to your arm. Okay? Now, that is an example of progressive muscle relaxation. And if we were doing that exercise now, what I would be doing, probably starting with your toes, your feet, and then your calves. And if we work up until we've done your whole body relaxing. And the important point is to tense it as tightly as you can, and notice how that feels, and then to relax those muscles, and notice, again, paying attention, how do my muscles feel when they're relaxed? Because frankly, we really don't, a lot of us even remember what it feels like when our muscles are relaxed, because we stay tense so much of the time. You can find tapes and CDs and that sort of thing at all kinds of bookstores if you would like to do progressive muscle relaxation. You can also find those on the internet. You can get them for free. You can actually just go on to say, Google progressive muscle relaxation, and those of you who are involved with computers much, you can actually just pull that up. You can practice the exercises right there. Now that is the least of my favorite out of 3 different types. But I wanted to start with that because a lot of people do like it. When I was at this anxiety convention up in Arlington, Virginia last week, we had a speaker who's a hypnotist from California, and he talked about the studies that he's doing. All of them were done with this progressive muscle relaxation. A lot of people like that. I like 2 other kinds. One is called autogenics. Okay? I want you to just sit and let your body go loose as much as you can. Okay? And don't worry about relaxing. You're just kind of loose. I want you to think about you're just kind of floating in your chair there, just feeling very calm and very peaceful. And I'm going to say a few things to you. Don't worry about whether anything happens or not. But I just want you to listen for a few moments as I say. My hands are warm. My hands are quite warm. My breath is relaxed. My breath is relaxed. My arms feel heavy. My arms feel heavy. I am beginning to feel quite calm. I am beginning to feel quite calm. My stomach feels peaceful. My chest feels calm. My eyes are resting. Okay. Now, did anybody notice any change at all? We just did that, of course, for 20, 25 seconds.
It is very calm.
You know, what we found, these are called autogenic suggestions. This is another thing that we see these take some online. If you will listen to those for about 20 minutes, we could actually take a little thermometer and put it on your finger, and you'll see about typically maybe a 5-degree change to the warmer. You tend to relax. Just these suggestions can help you to relax and calm yourself. So it's a wonderful tool for you to use at times when you're stressed, or I use it most nights before I go to sleep. I'll use some kind of relaxation. I have CDs that I'll listen to, that sort of thing. In finally, the third type, which I also like, and I'm sure most of you have probably experienced, is called creative visualization. Okay? And I'm not going to go into a whole exercise, but I'm just going to give you the gist of this. It would be something like, I might say, imagine yourself walking down the beach on Jekyll Island. And it's got to be about 5 o'clock at night. The warmth of the sun is still beating down on you just very comfortably. You're feeling just a slight breeze. The temperature's about 70 degrees. And you can feel it gently pushing against your body, making you feel very comfortable and relaxed. As you look out over the ocean, you see the sun beginning to set. The tones of the sky are a deep orange, changing slowly to yellow, and shades of purple beginning to appear as the sun sinks below the horizon. You're feeling extremely relaxed, all is at peace again. Okay, so that is an example of a visualization describing, recalling. There are a whole bunch of different ones, of course, that you can do, but that's one that works particularly well for me, and I really just tend to relax when I hear those. So those are some recommendations for, yes.
This is one of the things that we're going to be able to offer in our new home. Relaxation, classes on relaxation techniques. I'd love to talk to you more about that. But, there are a number of ways we may do it. One is while the person with dementia is doing some kind of arts and craft, maybe in the special arts room, the caregivers get to come out and have a relaxation class. Or just something for them to get away, because very often, even if they have the CD at home, they won't take the time to do it. But if they make it a destination and put it on their list, maybe they will come and join others. So this is something on our list, and I want to talk to you more about that.
I love that idea, Janice, too. Things that we can do for our loved ones with dementia that help them to relax, to keep them in a calmer place, just such wonderful thing. And not only for them, but for us, too. I'll tell you, some of the most relaxing moments I've had in my life are when I've been leading relaxation groups over the last 25 years. They're just wonderful music. Let's talk just a minute about music. Music itself can be a wonderful relaxation tool, can it? Yes.
I had a boss one time that brought someone in to teach us sort of self-hypnosis relaxation. And the person used Tibetan bells, a tape of Tibetan bells, and we would visualize like a leaf falling from a tree, taking us down, and the same thing, your muscles and everything relaxing, and like rubber bands unwinding, and it's so healthy, and you feel like you just have a little mini vacation doing that.
It's a wonderful way to put it. Absolutely, and those Tibetan bells, and some of the music from the East, some of the Buddhist meditation music, I find it relaxing. I like the Catholic monks chanting. I find that. So you find things in many religions that are just wonderful. Anybody have a type of music that really relaxes you, or a piece of music maybe? Classical. Okay, great. Anything else? Or a type of any specific? I'm trying to think. Here's a specific piece of classical music I'm trying to think of that really relaxes me a lot. But
piano music, like certain soft tunes from the piano, and very relaxing.
You're right. And organ music sometimes. Now, some of it's real loud and bombastic, but I can remember when my mom was the organist at a cathedral down in downtown Atlanta, and I can remember listening to her play Fugues by Bach, and they were just very relaxing. So well, the important thing is what works for you. You know, peace and quiet. Excellent. You know, that's wonderful. I'm going to get down. I don't know how we're doing on time. How are we doing? We close or we?
We're doing fine.
Okay, good. Will you just throw something at me when you want me to stop? Anyway, meditation. You know, I just sit. Different people may mean different things by meditation. But for me, I meditated before I came here tonight. I was sitting in my downstairs furniture. My wife came in the door, yelled out, "Where are you? We're out." You know, I said, "I'm down in Glenn's room." And she said, "What are you doing?" "Meditating." That's all I had to say. She was quiet after that. But it can just be peaceful. It can just be you sitting there where you don't have 1,000 things going on like we usually do in our lives. Lots. Just that quiet. Excellent point. It doesn't have to be music.
If you, with that satellite radio, spa music is very
It certainly is. Music is wonderful. Absolutely. And yeah, satellite radio, Pandora, great. I had just put down meditation. There's a guy named Herbert Benson. He wrote a book, I want to say 30 years ago, called The Relaxation Response. And I remember I was taking a class here in Brunswick from one of this artist over on St. Simon's, Ken Waller. You know Ken Waller? His artwork, real pretty stuff. Yeah. So anyway, Ken's also got a PhD in psychology. He was teaching a graduate class in psychology. We had to do a presentation. Anyway, to make a long story short, I did mine on relaxation and on Herbert Benson's The Relaxation Response. Now, 2 years ago, I was thrilled to see he was our keynote address presenter at the anxiety meeting. So I got to hear him go over it again. And what this guy did, he studied Eastern religions and took the elements of meditation that were common to all of them. And he said, look, let's make this easy for Western people. And he said, there's just about 5 different things you have to do. He said, you find a quiet, calm place where you're not going to be interrupted. And you sit there for a certain amount of time. You pay attention to your breathing. You don't even have to worry about changing your breathing. If you're breathing real fast and you're uptight, that's fine. Don't worry about changing it. Just sit down and notice your breathing. Your autonomic nervous system will automatically start to change your breathing. He said a lot of the religions and a lot of the practices use a word, a mantra. You don't have to use one. You can use anything. I used to use the number 1. But it helps you to focus so that your mind doesn't go all over the place. And meditation is one of the things that the more you practice it, the more relaxing you will find it. You're able to get a little bit of that distance sometimes from the difficulties and troubles that you have. Okay, yoga. Anybody do yoga? Anybody do stretching? I go to stretch class sometimes, and I love stretch class because it's kind of like yoga light. I want to show you first of all that I'm not a beginner. I'm a very good stretcher. Here's me. Oh, that's about it. If I sit here for a while, but I only show you this to point out, I really work at stretching and stretching my muscles and all that. And I was in athletics when I was a younger man. But this stretching stuff is tough. It's very relaxing, and it is wonderful for you. And guys, we're not taught to do that. If you're like me, you might have had a coach who said, before you run a 100-yard dash or something, you need to stretch a little bit. Not a lot of emphasis. So stretching, to me, is like a Hatha Yoga basic 101. So stretching is a terrific way for you to help yourself to relax. Let's talk real briefly about aromas. Anybody here find anything relaxing as far as aromas go? Tell me what.
I do a lot of aroma.
Sorry? lavender. Lavender is wonderful. Essential oil of lavender costs you $14. A little bottle like that of the essential oil. I know because I bought one today at the natural food store over on the island. I was going to bring it in here tonight to show you. But it's got a physiological effect on you. It will actually begin to let your muscles relax. Some people don't need that at all. You know, I can certainly walk into a house and smell chocolate chip cookies baking and get a visceral reaction to that, or an apple pie. But certain things tend to relax most of us and other things don't. Lavender is one of those that, for a lot of people, is really wonderful. Fewer stimuli in your living space. And I'm not just talking about whatever what your home is like, but where you spend a lot of your day. For example, I've worked in places, I don't right now, but I worked in a cubicle when I was in sales for the O'Connor and Associates. And in our cubicle, we had everything. We had notes up here, we had tickler files, we had sales items, we had memos, you know. And when your life is constantly, you are looking at things, and there's music on overhead, and maybe it's relaxing, or maybe it's the opposite of relaxing, you know, and you got telephone calls coming in, and just all this stuff happening. It is not conducive to relaxation. So if you're able to declutter, take some of that stuff out, to simplify, and make fewer of those things, you know, pulling at you all the time, that can be very useful. How about your physical health? Your body's health. Okay, do you exercise? I'm not talking about going and running a marathon or something. I'm talking about, can you get 15 minutes to just walk? If you start doing that, you will find that it improves your health. Your diet. And again, I think for most people, we hear so much on the television about this now, but it will help you as a caregiver if you're eating a decent diet. If you're getting some fruits and vegetables and some whole grains, and you're not just drinking nothing but Coca-Colas and coffee and that sort of stuff. I did want to mention one thing about exercise, because a lot of people go, you're either an exerciser and you love doing that, or you just hate it. And I'm not going to ask you whether you are or not, but how many of you would agree that for you, you either really like it a lot or you really don't like it a lot? Does it give an idea? Okay, that's most of the room. You can start with baby steps. Do you remember this movie, What About Bob? It was several years ago. It was very humorous, but it was about a guy who had severe anxiety, panic attacks. And I can laugh because I've been there. And anyway, Bob would take little tiny baby steps to try and get better, which is exactly what I did to get from the point where I was homebound, where I was stuck in my apartment in Denver for about 2 years, and I couldn't go to the mailbox. I was so terrified of panic attacks. But he would take baby steps. And my point is just to say, you do the same thing with exercise. You can lie in your bed in the morning when you first wake up. You don't even have to get out of bed and start exercising. Sometimes I'll start with flexing muscles when I'm lying in the bed, or I'll start stretching. You know, you can actually get started before you even get out of the bed. Do get out of the bed. Depression keeps you in the bed. That's not something you want to do. So finally, I wanted to make my last point. Tap into your spirituality on a daily basis. And I specifically say spirituality to be inclusive. Okay? And it is not to say I disagree if you have a very strong belief in whatever your religious belief may be. I think that is wonderful. We probably have different religions represented in the room. Usually we do. I just went to, this is typical, at the conference that I was at, I went to one seminar, Religion That Heals, Religion That Harms. Okay? And the key idea, he says, is religious coping is a resource, not a resistance. So I see religion or spirituality, whatever may be most meaningful to you in terms in terms of a higher power, a creator, a being, a God, or if you don't have that belief, there are people who are atheists who still have a spirituality. And my point is, I think for a lot of us, our core beliefs in God, in a spiritual being are so very strong and can provide us a wealth of help in times when we turn to prayer, when we turn to meditation, when we turn to our scriptures, whatever that may be, that I would be very surprised if that would be a very strong tool for each of us in our attempts to do a better job every day of being a caregiver.
That's what I do. I ask God each morning to guide me and give me the patience and the strength to cope with the caregiving.
I love that. That's great. Others? Anybody else have a yes?
I found, or I do find that even like a prayer journal at night, where you just write down your frustrations and your prayers and your wishes and people you want to remember, whatever it is, it kind of keeps my sleep peaceful.
Yeah, that's great. Because we know we can have the opposite. We can have very disturbed sleep at night, and that doesn't make for a good caregiver. Did you have a comment?
I didn't come up with this idea. There was an elderly gentleman that shared something that he did, and I picked it up. And there are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. And every day, or every night, I would read one chapter. And I've done that for a lot of months now. And it's done amazing things. It helps you learn it. It helps you remember it without even trying.
Thank you. That's fabulous. Yeah, there's so much wisdom in particular. Any questions before I kind of line things up? I'll give you a chance if anybody. Yes.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we, as friends or family members, can encourage someone. Maybe it's a good friend, maybe it's another family member who we see overstressed, depressed, maybe withdrawn. How do you bring them out? You know, what are your thoughts about how we can encourage them without lecturing them, without telling them what they need to do? How can we coax them out of isolation or, you know?
Good question. Sometimes it's pretty tough. I think being a good listener, being available to them, sometimes I think we're so used to giving our advice to people or kind of assuming that that person sort of hears the same language that I'm talking all the time. And they don't. We know this as people. A lot of times, you know, we'll hear something from one person, but if somebody else said the same thing, we would not hear it in a way. I think so much has to do with that attitude of, I'm not here to tell you what you said. You know, I'm not here to preach to you or to tell you what you have to do or to lay the law down or whatever, but I'm available, I'm interested, I care about you. And so much of that, too, Janice, I think is something we convey without words. You know, sometimes it's just being available. And I'll tell you an acronym that one of my favorite pastors had for the word busy. He gave a sermon one time on how we stay so busy. We're all so busy. And he said, B-U-S-Y, busy stands for burdened under Satan's yoke. And I always remember that because if I'm too busy to help somebody, then that's a problem in my life. And I certainly, and you know, there have been times like that. So maybe creating some type of a space for spending time with that person, listening. And also, maybe you know something about what that person will hear and what they won't hear, so that you can kind of generate a message to them in some words that they can. Anybody else have any ideas on that?
I think sometimes when a person is dealing with someone who's very ill, people shy away from bringing it up, talking about it. When I think it's very therapeutic for that person to be able to talk about it. Just to say, how's your husband or how's your wife doing? How's the disease progressing? What's going on with them? So that the person gets a chance to maybe talk it out. It's not you're going to solve the problem, but it gives them an opportunity to express maybe a frustration or what have you. Because a lot of people really shy away from getting into those intimate conversations. And I think it's good for the person to have somebody to talk to.
It sounds like you're almost giving the person permission to talk about that to you when they may feel uncomfortable too about just saying something. So, yes, sir.
I'm sort of a latecomer, I guess, but I'm into the coastal caregiver agent down here. We got these classes going on right now. You probably know about them.
Yes, sir.
We're in class number 2, we just finished, and right now we're in the breathing, which you brought up. I didn't want to just interrupt you then.
No, okay.
So I'm doing that this week. Each week we have a certain thing that helps the caregiver, care for the caregiver. They give you a big book about it like that, and I really digested that thing. Because this is completely new to me, and I know it's new to so many people. As the gentleman says, it's thrust upon you. And it is thrust upon us, and we have to do something about it. But it's very informative. This is very informative. And I've talked to Janice and others about one thing that I know will help is get some action on some of these support groups, where we can sit around and talk to each other and share things. Because if you get 10 or 15, 12, 15, whatever, 6 or 12 people in there talking, and it's always good. Yes, these ladies over here, they're in my support group over there around. And like I said, I mean, you come, but I'm right in there with them. I'm bloody in with them. But it's really, people got to get to know each other. Then they can proceed from there. Get some information that they can use, because so many people do not know. I know from other families that they would just disrupt everything you try to do. You're doing it wrong. But you can't. How can they know if they haven't been trained? I haven't been trained, but I'm trying my daughters to be trained now.
I think that's wonderful.
You sure do. When you live for 61 years, I'll tell you right now.
Well, I tell you what, my skill set does not include being organized, but I actually cut that out of the paper and was going to show it tonight too. I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is like, we're skimming the surface tonight. We've got an hour here, and I'm grateful to have that opportunity with you all. But yeah, to really get in depth with this, you need the kind of program that they're offering. It's over what, 4 different? 6 nights. Okay, great.
It's actually 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
It's on Thursdays and for the first month or 2, and the next month it drops over to Tuesdays.
Great.
So I don't have the time, 10:30, 10 to 11:30 in the mornings.
So if anybody's interested, could they ask you, and maybe I could write that down? Just those. Okay, yes, thank you so much, Tori.
Different ones for different days.
That's
so
right.
just try to.
Jennifer's been having 2 short periods, the last 2. Yeah.
Well, and I'm so proud of Roy for doing this, because a lot of caregivers will not take the time for themselves to do something. They'll come to one seminar, but to do something over 6 weeks, they won't allow themselves to do that. They won't give that gift to themselves.
Right. Gift to themselves, and it turns out to the person they're caring for also.
And ultimately, in these support groups, they're going to reap the benefit that they couldn't go. They're going to be benefit too.
I think that's.
I'll share with them as much as I can, as long good or whatnot, but let them talk to us.
Isn't that true? When you get with a group who know what you're talking about, who know what they're talking about, and you have that connection, that's so much more powerful than if just anybody is talking to you or whatever. So, yeah, I think the support groups are fabulous, and kudos to you as well, Janice, for going from, I believe you had one support group when you started, and you now have 5 support groups here. I think you deserve
Well, and one of the objectives too is by having so many activities in our new wonderful home is that it will involve people, because a lot of people just shy away from support group. You know, they think group therapy or it just sounds to something personal. But you bring people together in a room doing an activity and a natural support group forms. And so I'm hoping that by offering socialization, bringing people together, that they will start talking with each other and share, in a social environment. So it's a very natural support system.
I'll tell you, without the support group, I don't think I could have gotten through the 15 years preparing for my first one. They were wonderful. They really were. And thanks to Janice and all the nice people that worked on it.
It's powerful. Well, in closing, folks, I just wanted to say 2 things. One is I want to express my appreciation to Rosalyn Carter, because this is one of her older books. I've read others, but just a wonderful thing she has done by developing a program that is just for caregivers. And finally, I wanted to end with a quote that's always meant a lot to me. It's a short little thing, but it's something that was written by Walter Roberts, he's deceased now, but he's the father of Julia Roberts and Eric Roberts. And he wrote a play called The Emperor's Nightingale. And one of the things that the Emperor says during the play is, there is always much to be done, and little of it is very easy. But do all that you do with goodness and truth, for these are the things that satisfy heaven. They should be enough to satisfy me.